everyone, and wherever you are at, we are so grateful that you've chosen to join us today for worship. And before we begin, I want to start by reading the words of this song that we're going to do. It's a song that we've done for a number of years here, but I want to read them to you as a prayer. And so if you would join with me wherever you're at, and maybe even bow your head, and if you would take these words in as a prayer that we would offer to God, and then offer those very same words to Him in praise. Would you bow with me? God, you are able, and you never fail. And that is true because you are Almighty God. You are greater than everything that we would seek and all that we ask. And in everything we see that you have done great things. God, we know you are with us, that you are on our side, and that in all things you will always make a way. God, you are greater than all we know. You are greater than all we hope, and you reveal that in the great things you have done. God, you are with us. You will always go before us. You will never leave us. And Father, you are for us and always there with open arms. And because of that, we know you will never fail. God, we know all of these things are true because you were lifted up. You defeated the grave. You have been raised to life. And because of that, you are able. And in all these things, God, we are grateful and we offer them back to you in praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Able, he will never fail. He is Almighty God, greater than all we see, greater than all we ask. He has done great things, lifted up, he defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able, in His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. God is with us. God is on our side. He will make a way. Far above all we know, far above all we hope. He has done great things, lifted up, he defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. God is with us. He will go before. He will never leave us. He will never leave us. God is for us. He has open arms. He will never fail us. He will never fail us. Lifted up, he defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. For the Lord our God is able. For the Lord our God is able. The dark tried to hide you, steal you away. Death tried to keep you inside of the grave. He tried, but he lost. You cannot be stopped. When we cried for freedom, you tore down the walls. The weight of our burdens, you carried it all. Our fears and our failures hang dead on a cross. You cannot be stopped. Mover of mountains, breaker of chains, Jesus has triumphed over the grave. Sing hallelujah, battle is won. Nothing can stand against our God. We stand on your victory, we shout out your praise. Miracle maker, you're mighty to save. Awesome in power, relentless in love. You cannot be stopped. Mover of mountains, breaker of chains, Jesus has triumphed over the grave. Sing hallelujah, the battle is won. Nothing can stand against our God. There's nothing that can stop our God. There's nothing that can stop our God. There's nothing that can stop our God. There is nothing. There's nothing that can stop our God. There's nothing that can stop our God. There's nothing that can stop our God. There is nothing. There is nothing. Mover of mountains, breaker of chains, Jesus has triumphed over the grave. Sing hallelujah, battle is won. Nothing can stand against our God. Sing hallelujah, battle is won. Nothing can stand against our God.
Good morning, CCTO. We're going to go ahead and receive our offering together. So if you would pray with me, we will do that as a church. Father in heaven, we come before you this morning prepared to give because you have been good to us. God, you know what we need even before we know what we need, God. And so, Lord, because of your sovereignty, because of your capacity to know everything, Lord, we trust you with our resources. And God, we trust that you're going to do good things with them, far beyond what we could do ourselves. We give to you out of grateful hearts and generous hearts. In the name of Jesus, amen. A few ways to give are coming across your screen right now, and I want to share just a couple of brief announcements with you as that's taking place. The first being that our annual or our year-long devotional series that we're doing together as a church, A Year with Jesus, is in full swing now. So we're coming into the third week, and we've just had a lot of really cool opportunities, a lot of great feedback from some people that this has just been really a meaningful and transformative experience. So if you're not yet part of this, we encourage you to participate. You can sign up by going to ccto.org and clicking on the Year with Jesus banner on the homepage there, and then following the instructions. If you are signed up, the email that came out this morning should have this week's devotion attached to it. So go ahead and dive into that. One more quick announcement is that our new youth pastor, Anthony, is here, as you probably are aware, and what that means is that youth services are resuming midweek. So we're meeting outside, we're wearing masks, we're doing all the appropriate things to keep people safe and healthy, but we are meeting. So high school meets on Tuesday nights from 6:30 to 8, and middle school meets Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8. If you have more questions about that, you can email Anthony at anthony@ccto.org. Let's go ahead and turn our hearts now to receiving communion together. And this morning, as we prepare our hearts for that, I just want to simply share the passage from the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus initiates the taking of communion with his disciples. And it comes from Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 26. And it says, "While they were eating, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, 'Take and eat, this is my body.' Then he took the cup and gave thanks and offered it to them, saying, 'Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for the forgiveness of sins.'" Jesus invited his disciples to do this somewhere around 2,000 years ago now. And here we are, 2,000 years later, still participating in this act that reminds us of the work and the sacrifice and the tremendous love and mercy and grace of Jesus. Each week we come together and receive communion so that we might be reminded of the fact that Jesus willingly went to the cross so that we might experience the forgiveness that he offers. Would you pray with me as we receive communion this morning? Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the work of Christ. God, for the weekly reminder that we have of what it is that he did for us. God, by willingly going to his own death, Lord, in order to protect us. God, to protect us from your wrath, to protect us from separation from you, Lord, to protect us from ourselves, Lord, to protect us from the consequences of our own sin. God, you are good to us. You are merciful. Father, we take this in remembrance of Jesus because he has been good to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
want to remind us every single week of what our mission is all about, what we're trying to accomplish here at CCTO. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And it's out of this verse that we've constructed our mission statement, because we're about making disciples one at a time. A disciple of Jesus is someone who has accepted his invitation, that's "come follow me," is being transformed by him, and "I will make you," and is investing in his mission, fishers of men. That's our mission statement. That's what we seek to do, to make disciples of Jesus one at a time. Now, I want to talk today about how we do that and how God prepares us to make disciples, but he does it one decision at a time. Last week we talked about how he works in us one day at a time, but it's also one decision at a time. I want you to finish this statement. Think about your life. Think about where you are right now versus where you were 10 years ago, or whatever time frame you want to put on there. And just ask this question, or say this statement: "I thought by now," and then fill in the blank. And maybe there's a couple of questions you should ask yourself as you're thinking through that "I thought by now" statement. One question is, how did I get to where I currently am? I thought by now I would be, somewhere else in my life. But here's where I'm at. So how did I get to where I currently am? And you look back over your life, or at least this past year, as interesting a year as it's been, and try to answer that question. And pay attention to yourself, because, if you're saying, "How did I get to where I currently am?" and then you start blaming other people, if the way you answer that question is by saying, "Well, my spouse," or "Well, my parents," or "Well, my friends," or "If God would have," be careful with that. Second question to ask yourself when thinking about that statement, "I thought by now," here's the second question: how do I get to where I want to be? So, how did I get to where I am, and how do I get to where I want to be? And I think these are questions that we ought to be considering on a pretty regular basis. But here's the thing. The answer to both of these questions is actually the same answer. And the answer is this: one decision at a time. That's how you get to where you are, and this is how you'll get to where you want to be. Now, obviously we understand, especially if we look at the circumstances we've been living through recently, there are a lot of mitigating circumstances. There are a lot of mitigating situations that are sometimes out of our control. We understand that. But still, here's the thing. How you decide to respond to those, that's what we're really talking about. Someone put it like this: life is the sum of all of our decisions. Your decisions decide your life. And they add up, and it's one decision at a time. Now, I think most of us understand, or at least we appreciate, the ripple effect of big decisions. We understand that there are certain decisions that we make that they just carry a lot of weight. All right? Where am I going to live? What am I going to do with my life? Who am I going to marry? And we understand the ripple effect of those big decisions. But typically, we underestimate the cumulative effect of small decisions. Put a lot of weight on these big decisions, and then underestimate the cumulative effect of the small decisions. But I want you to hear me on this. Our small decisions have a way of making the big decisions for us. So, for example, if the big decision is, who am I going to marry? Then all these small decisions about who I am and what I give my heart and my mind to, and who I date and what I look for in another person, all of these small decisions are then ultimately really making that big decision, that we make when we're going to marry. One little decision at a time adds up to explain where you are now and will determine where you're going to be in the future. Now, interestingly enough, the Bible calls this, and nature would call this, the law of sowing and reaping. Paul addresses it in Galatians 6, verse 7. He says, "Do not be deceived." God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. So here's what I want you to do today as we're kind of talking about one decision at a time. I want you to think about every decision you make as a seed that gets planted in the ground, and you will always reap what you plant, because it's the law of sowing and reaping. God has built this into the universe. He has hardwired it into creation. And we understand this agriculturally. If you plant a certain kind of seed, well, you're going to get a certain kind of fruit. The law of sowing and reaping. You don't have to like it, okay? You don't even have to understand it. You don't even have to explain it. It is just true. It's true in your life. It's true in my life. Literally every decision that we make is like a seed that we sow, and you always reap what you sow. You know, the law of sowing and reaping is a lot like the law of gravity. You don't have to like the law of gravity. Don't have to understand the law of gravity to be affected by the law of gravity. May not even agree with the law of gravity. The law of gravity doesn't care. If you trip and fall, it still applies. This is true for the law of sowing and reaping. You can underestimate it. You can dismiss it. You know, you can be a young adult and say, I don't really think it works that way. You can do that, but you're deceiving yourself. Every decision you make is a seed that you sow, and you always reap what you sow. The law of sowing and reaping. Now, when I say that, and you're hearing this, my question to you is, how do you hear it? So I think some of you hear it as a warning. You hear it a little bit as a threat. Maybe you're even a little bit defensive over it. Maybe you're a little bit frightened of it. Well, if that's true, what's that mean? What does that mean for you and the path that you're on, the seeds that you've been planting? Others of you probably hear it as a promise. It's encouraging to you because you know that the seeds that you have been planting and the decisions that you have been making, and you're believing that God is again going to bring some fruit from those things in your life. See, the point is this: the law of sowing and reaping can work for you, and it can also work against you. The law of one decision at a time can work against you, but it also can work for you. One decision at a time, honestly, is how a marriage falls apart. But one decision at a time is how a marriage comes together. One decision at a time is how you got out of shape. I mean, that's what happened to me this past year, you know, putting on the COVID whatever. I didn't quite get to 19. Doesn't seem like much at the time. It's just one cheeseburger, right? But one decision at a time is how you get there. One decision at a time on the other side of it is how you get fit. It's how you get healthy. One decision at a time is how you go into debt. Just one charge at a time. You look at the statement at the end of the month and you see the total and you think, what? This isn't right? What happened here? You go back through it and you start looking at it more carefully. Well, it was one charge at a time. That's how you got into debt. It's how you get out of debt as well. One decision at a time. It's how you got here. It's also how you get out of here. It's how it works. So the question is this: what seeds are you sowing? Because the decisions we make one at a time have the potential not just to determine where we will be in the future, but to impact people around us as well. One decision at a time, I would argue, is how Jesus changed the world. And we see an example of this in John 1. John picks up the life of Jesus, and Jesus is already 30 years old in John chapter 1. When he comes on the scene here, he's beginning his ministry, and we'll see how he changes the world, one decision at a time. Verse 35, it says, the next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. So we're reading in the Gospel of John, John the disciple, but the John that's referenced here, that's John the Baptist. John the Baptist. It says, there he's again with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, look, the Lamb of God. When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. There's no doubt whatsoever that they had been listening to John for a while talk about Jesus. John was all about Jesus. John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin, and he was always talking about Jesus. And in fact, a few chapters later, he's going to be questioned, you know, kind of, hey, are you threatened? Are you jealous because some of your followers are now followers of Jesus? And John says, no. He must increase and I must decrease. See, that was the controlling decision for John the Baptist's life. John 3, verse 30. He must become greater and I must become less. More of Jesus, less of me. More of Jesus, less of me. And if you start filtering your decisions through that statement, people around you can notice and start following Jesus themselves. And that's what happened. So what does that look like, for example? What would it mean for your decisions if you thought through your decisions with that in mind? More of Jesus, less of me. Because I think most of our decisions are made with more of me in mind. What am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get noticed? What do I want to do? But rather, if you say more of Jesus, less than me, then sometimes that's going to be a decision to respond with humility when you feel your pride boiling up. It's a decision to give instead of always spend. It's a decision to build up rather than tear down. It's a decision to wave someone in rather than cut someone off. It's a decision to give grace when you'd rather get even. It's a decision to release your frustrations over to God when you feel like just ranting on Facebook. It's a decision to say yes when you feel like saying no, and sometimes it's a decision to say no when you feel like saying yes. It's a decision to say, you know what, look at Jesus, instead of saying, look at me. That's how John lived his life. He made his decisions based on that premise. More of Jesus, less of me. And because of that, it's not surprising when people around him then start following Jesus. And that's exactly what happened. Several of his disciples, John the Baptist's disciples, follow Jesus. And so back in John 1, you pick it up in verse 37, it says, when the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, it says, Jesus saw them following and asked, what do you want? They're following Jesus, but they're not followers of Jesus. Not yet. And there's a difference. It's a subtle difference. They're following Jesus to learn more about him, but they're not followers of Jesus as disciples. So Jesus turned around, he looked at them, he says, what do you guys want? The way that's translated for our understanding is, what are you looking for? That's a good question. It's a good question to consider as you're thinking through decisions. Because I think this is what really determines, for many of us, the decisions we make. It's what do we want and what are we looking for? And this is tricky and it gets us in trouble because we'll make these decisions based on what we want right now, but that decision may not lead us to what we really want later on. Let's say you want to be in shape later. That may mean you make a decision to do something that you don't want to do right now. I want that fourth piece of pizza. Okay, well, maybe not now. That's what I want to do. But do I really want that later? And so sometimes the question has to be, what do you really want? That's the question. We have to say, what do I really want in order to make the right decision now? This is how most of us make decisions. We don't really think about it. We just kind of do what we want in the moment. But the problem is, what we want in the moment sometimes means hurting people around us, and it definitely means that we won't always be what we want to be in the future. And here's a general rule to live by. If you really want to do it right now, you should probably stop and ask yourself, does this really align with who I really want to be? So Jesus looks at these two guys and says, what do you want? What are you looking for? What's missing that you're searching for? And here's how they say that they go, Rabbi, where are you staying? So they want to spend more time with Jesus. Where are you staying? And then in verse 39, here's what Jesus said to them. He just said, come and see. Come and you'll see. So the first words out of Jesus' mouth in the Gospel of John are, what do you want? Come and see. What are you looking for? Come and see. Maybe you're not sure what to feel about Jesus right now. I think that this is exactly what Jesus would say to you. These are the things that he would say, the very first words he said in the Gospel of John. I think he would say, hey, what are you looking for? What's missing in your life? Come and see. Come and take a look and decide for yourself. So that's what happens. It says that they went, they saw where he was staying, and they spent the day with him. It says it was about 4 PM. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, he was one of the two that heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. So he's one of the 2 disciples of John who's now following Jesus. And this is what it says about him in verse 41. So this is what it says about Andrew. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon, we know him as Peter, and said, "We found the Messiah, who is the Christ." Now, I'm sure Peter heard this. He had to have some questions about that. How do you know, Andrew? What evidence do you have? Are you sure? And Andrew didn't know all the answers to the questions. So here's what it says in verse 42. And he brought him to Jesus. That's it. Andrew doesn't show up a lot in Scripture, but when he does, this is what he's doing. He's bringing people to Jesus. And when Peter comes to Jesus, it says this. Jesus looked at him and says, "You are Simon, son of John. You'll be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. So John makes the decision, John the Baptist, to point Andrew to Jesus. Andrew makes the decision to point Peter to Jesus. And this is how the gospel began to change the world. One person at a time, telling one person at a time about Jesus. And this is what we want to do. As a church, we want to be part of changing the world. And it's like this. It's one person at a time, telling one person at a time. It's one person at a time making a decision at a time that will point people in their life to Jesus. Okay? That's our grand plan, honestly, here at CCTO. That's our mission. It's not that fancy, but it's that simple. It's making a decision, one decision at a time, to point one person at a time to Jesus. That's the plan. To have a person making one decision at a time that puts them on mission to what God has called us to do and to prepare the world for when Jesus returns. That's it. Now, with that in mind, I just want to ask you some questions as we wrap this up. I'm going to ask you specifically to make some decisions. And they'll seem little at first, but the power of these decisions made by all of us, if we all choose to do it, would be exponential. It would be a huge effect. Here's the first decision I want you to make for going into this new year. Will you decide to spend 1% of your weekly time connecting to Jesus? That's it. Jesus is the vine. We are the branch. We talked about that a lot this last fall in John chapter 15. Our job is to connect to him. Are you going to spend 1% of your weekly time connecting to Jesus? So within the week, you got a little over 10,000 minutes, like 10,080 minutes. 1% of our time would mean 100 minutes with Jesus. We spend 100 minutes of your week connecting with Jesus. And there's all kinds of ways to do this. All right? We can do it now. We can do it in a small group. We would love to connect you in those. There's opportunities for that. You can do the Year with Jesus devotional. You can spend some time reading the Word on your own. You can spend some time in prayer. Connect with Jesus. 100 minutes a week. I want to challenge you to begin each day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, praying through your day and saying, Jesus, will you guide my decisions today, one decision at a time? And I want you to know, if we all do that, the impact of that, and in this community and around the world, will be exponential. Here's another one. Will you decide to invite one person to come to church in this next year? Just one person. I mean, maybe you just invite them to turn us on YouTube and watch, and then you give them a call. Or maybe invite them to come out here to our socially distanced service. Or maybe you wait and you invite them when we're all coming together again and we're in the sanctuary. It doesn't matter. One person. Andrew goes to his brother, Peter, okay? Andrew doesn't have all the answers to the questions. So he didn't do a bunch of reading. He didn't read a bunch of theological stuff. He didn't have all the commentaries memorized. He didn't even know any scripture, okay? He didn't know the answer to life's hard questions. That's what keeps us from talking to people all the time. He just went to his brother Peter and said, here's what I found. Here's an invitation. That's all we're asking you to do. Here's what I found. Here's the difference Jesus has made on life. Here's the difference of being part of this church family has made in my life. I'd love to invite you to come. Statistically, 75% of those who are asked by someone to come to church with them will go. Here's the third one. Will you decide to trust God with your finances this year and increase your giving by 1% with the goal of the tithe? I mean, if the goal is the tithe, which is 10%, you're not there, would you try 1% extra than what you're doing now? So one decision, little step at a time, to honor God and honor Him with our first fruits. It's an act of worship. And here's the last one, and this is for all of us. Will you follow Jesus every day? You know, there's a thing out there, it's called decision fatigue, and it's kind of this big deal, and it's what leads to a lot of anxiety and stress. And as a culture, you know, we make more decisions per day by far than other people have had to deal with in history. Decision fatigue. But there's some big decisions that will decide a lot of other decisions for you. In other words, if you can make one big decision and say, well, this is my decision, then it has a way of taking care of all the other little decisions. And maybe for some of you, you're dealing with the stress of a decision of how you're going to deal with the problems in your marriage or with your kids, and you know, how to handle money, and what are you going to do with your life, and you know, purpose and meaning in life, and you've got all kinds of decisions, you know. What are you going to watch on Netflix? I already watched everything on Netflix this year, and I'm going to watch it backwards or something like that. So many options, and it's stressful. Listen, there's one decision, and this is one big decision if you make it. And life gets a lot easier when you make this one big decision. It's this one. I am going to follow Jesus every day. Yeah, it's kind of like putting on a shirt. You know, where do you start when you button a shirt? If it's a button down, right? You button the top button first. If you get that one lined up, right? Just make sure that one's lined up, then the rest follows so easily. Listen, when you decide to follow Jesus every day, it's like a top button decision. You make that one, and a lot of the other decisions become so much easier. They're determined. It's a determinative decision for our life. So that's what God is calling us to do. He's calling us to make disciples, one person at a time. And it begins by us following Jesus one day at a time and making one decision at a time to follow Him every single day. Father in heaven, we ask your blessing on every person today. And I pray, Father, that we would be strengthened by you, that you would strengthen us by your Holy Spirit in our inner being. Father, that we might follow Jesus every single day and make the decision every single day that that's what we're going to do. And then these smaller decisions will be determined by that. Lord, bring us people in our lives this year that we can share our life with, that we can point them to Jesus, the way Andrew pointed his brother to Jesus. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
You gave your life for mine, nailed to the cross, you crucified all my sin and shame. It was washed by your mercy. You are the treasure I find, my reason for living. So let my life become an offering to the one who is worthy. All praise to the Lord Most High. All praise to the one who saved my life. All praise to Jesus Christ, my King of heaven, my King forever. You stormed the gates of my heart. The veil in between was torn apart. Now you hold the keys to the grave, 'cause you bring things to life. You roll stones away. All praise to the Lord Most High. All praise to the one who saved my life. All praise to Jesus Christ, my King of heaven, my King forever. And I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life down before you. I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life now is for you. And I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life now before you. And I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life now is for you. And I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life down for you. I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down, my whole life now is for you. And all praise to the Lord Most High, all praise to the one who saved my life, all praise to Jesus Christ, my King of heaven, my King forever. May you go this week laying your whole life down before God, and that would be your gift of praise. God bless you. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.